we ask you that?
This is the microphone. Nobody asked.
I asked if it was on.
Wait, this is great. We can like dub in stuff.
We could dub in stuff. Thank you for catching that. I only like to re-record the beginning. Marriage is discipleship. Should I start over? Right. The problem is that we become self-focused, and our objective becomes to like meet our own needs and chase after our own interests and whatnot. And it makes it easier in many ways. Like, it makes it much easier to not forgive. Like, so when the other person crosses you, it becomes easier and easier to like keep track of wrongs. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like if you overhear people who've been married a while and they start arguing, they'll pull out every old argument. You know, remember, but you said, and this thing happened, and remember when, and you know, and they got this whole like pile of arguments they drag around with each other. I mean, Jess and I did that for quite a while, and we don't anymore because we argue better now.
It's called resolution.
Yeah, we resolve our arguments. But what happens is, like, in that self-centered focus and that inward focus, like, you stop forgiving, you stop letting go, you stop being concerned about growing closer to your spouse all the time, and it becomes more so about, well, what are you doing for me? Or how are you meeting my needs? And in reality, like discipleship is centered on growing to be more like Jesus, and growing to be more like Jesus means that you take the form of a servant, right? And you, like Paul talks about that quite a bit, making the other person's needs more important than ours, right? Like setting the other person's needs before our own. And so in the process of discipleship, we put the other person's needs ahead of our own, and we communicate how we're doing with these things, and we express frustrations, or we say, hey, you know, this isn't okay, or hey, we should do this better. Part of what makes us hard is we live in a culture that has a very different idea of what love is, right? You fall in love, right? Or you fall out of love. I had a good friend who divorced his wife, and he and his wife got divorced, and he and I were talking one day. He's like, oh, we just fell out of love. That's it, we just fell out of love. And I was like, well, you know, you stop going on dates, you stop talking to each other, you stop doing everything married people do, and then you fell out of love. Like, it's kind of this passive idea that love is this feeling that I have, and it comes and it goes and all this other stuff. And in reality, love isn't passive at all. Like, when you look at the biblical notion of love is this active thing. You invest in it, you chase after it. Love is about putting the other person's interest first. It's about paying attention to the other person's needs. It's about, you know, like this outward focus rather than this passive like thing that happens. Does that make sense? Anybody have an opinion on that? Like, as we kind of providing opportunities for feedback.
Sounds like
You could amen chorus for me. And in the end, like, we can move away or we can move toward, right? And there's going to be like bumpy spots in there, and it's easy to say, oh well, we had a big fight. I don't know. Jess and I'm trying to think what the longest fight we ever had. We had a fight that lasted months, actually, way back when, 10 plus years ago now. We had a fight that lasted over a month. I think that's the longest fight we ever had, right? Anybody have anywhere close? Can anybody compete with me? Well, you guys shouldn't. You guys haven't been married long. What?
Does anybody want to?
No.
I would say no.
No. But what happens
say
there?
that we've been fighting our whole married life so far.
Oh, yeah.
I'm feeling how long
And you
we've been
still
married.
wouldn't be as long as we did. So, the point being, it's very easy to like come into this place where you have conflict and sort of this ongoing rolling conflict. And a lot of that is about like self-interest, or about an inability to compromise because your like desire or your interest is number one. One of the things that the author talks about, I thought this was worth sharing. If any of y'all ever jumped across a creek? This is Montana, so almost none of you. I remember in high school, or in junior high, I was walking home from school. I had to cross this creek, and I jumped, and I hit, and I fell back instead of falling forward. Like I hit, but I didn't hit good, and I fell back into the creek. Like instead of falling forward onto the ground. And he talks about that. Like if you're going to jump across a river, if you're going to fall forward. If you fall forward, at least you're on the other side. You fall backward, you fall in. And it's the idea here is like this spiritual component. I don't have scripture verses for this one this week. I'm sorry, guys. The idea here is if you're going to fall forward, right? So if you're going to have arguments and you're going to hit points where you're self-centered, like you have to actually deal with them and converse about them and like address them so that you're falling forward instead of falling backward. You see this a lot of times where like one person will make a huge mistake, right? A huge mistake, and there'll be this huge like you this and you that and like all the shame and all this guilt and everything else. And like with that huge mistake, you can either work together to figure out how to do better, like as a couple, or you can fall backward and one person gains prominence and the other one loses it, right? And you'll see that in relationships where somebody will mess up and like there becomes this uneven playing field and they never realign, and that becomes a problem. Moving toward each other is harder for men than women. We've talked about this in the past, like men tend to talk less, right? That's the reason that men and women converse about 27 minutes a week after they, after they get married, because men don't talk. Like we talk when we're dating because like this need that isn't a major need for us but is there, suddenly we're not lonely and we're interested in you and there are all these other things we want to do, and like marriage is a part of the list and all these things. So we're chasing after this and we talk because of that. But after marriage we fall into that pattern of not talking. Come home from work and not talk. We just don't communicate as much. Men tend to see independence as a sign of strength, right? Like we don't want to be controlled. I don't need to tell you about my feelings because John Wayne wouldn't. Does that sound right? It's just not like strength. There's strength in independence, and there's strength in like standing on your own. Like it's a mature thing when you don't talk about your feelings. It's a, and it at the end of the day that makes it harder for us to move toward each other. In addition, men tend to struggle with the idea of emotional connection. We just don't talk about our feelings. We do, but our feelings are things like hungry, right? And so for our role then we have to like try and connect with you on your feelings. And that's very difficult for us because we just don't do it naturally, right? And we've talked a lot about that with love and respect, where wives want to be loved and men want to be respected. And you end up with this big division that happens there, and it sort of creates this break. And really the challenge in sort of the growing together and this discipleship, this side-by-side movement, is that like not communicating and sort of wearing pink sunglasses or blue sunglasses can create sort of this conflict and like a sense of betrayal sometimes, and breeds anger, and it results in sort of this attitude of offense. When we live in that place, it just makes it harder to grow together, isn't it? Any of you guys ever want to like be spiritual with somebody you don't like? Not all that easy, right? Talk about Jesus with somebody who ticks you off. But it means that we have to kind of forgive, and we got to step past our self-centeredness. We have to put those things behind us. It's like part of discipleship. Marriage, like it's about fellowship, rather than sort of this teacher-student traditional discipleship relationship, which is harder. It requires that you do it very intentionally because it just won't happen. It won't just happen. Does that make sense? I've discovered that over the years, if you don't intentionally spend time talking about Jesus, you don't do it, right? My wife and I were dating, and it was like, when we were married, we're gonna like do devotions, we're gonna pray together, we're gonna do all these things, and amazingly, because we didn't do it, we didn't do it, right? You gotta do it intentionally, you gotta plan for it, you gotta put effort into it, it doesn't happen. The other thing that goes with this is it doesn't gloss over or ignore sinful behaviors. They have to be dealt with. They have to be dealt with in a Christ-like way. Where they're like acknowledged and forgiven. And this requires that we deal with each other like with grace, even when we don't want to have grace. Because you're just as wrong if you don't forgive and you don't offer grace and you don't engage as you are if you commit the sin in the first place. Everybody with me? Everybody awake? Sarah's reading her coffee cup and there's nothing printed on it.
Drawing on it because it helps.
Oh, you're drawing on it? Okay.
Helps me listen.
You're writing on it too, something to read. I got another video. Under attitude and heart, we're kind of going back into love and respect.
Men, how many times has this happened to you?
Me. You know, our babies sleep really, really good.
Or this?
Make sure Timmy wears the blue shirt. If he doesn't.
Or even this?
And for my birthday, which is next month, I'd really like something.
Do you have trouble listening or retaining information from your wife? You could be suffering from spousal selective listening, or SSL. With SSL, valuable input is intercepted or scrambled before it reaches the critical learning center of the man brain. Virtually anything to trigger it, like sports, food, even shiny objects with buttons. Fortunately, there is help with Heritol. Containing a rare root with an exotic name, Heritol helps men focus and listen to valuable female input, even pick up on those subtle hints.
These are exactly the earrings I wanted. How did you know?
Thanks, Heritol. Now I can hear it all. Heritol has not been tested or approved by any regulatory agency. Side effects of Heritol include minor to severe headaches and spontaneous combustion. Use caution when using Heritol and your mother's-in-law. As you may hear hurtful comments that have previously been ignored. Heritol is an enhancement drug. Do not use around children or clusters of talkable, blue-haired women. If focused listening lasts longer than 4 hours, consult your doctor immediately before your wife assumes this is a new standard in your relationship. Men with wives who are nursing or pregnant should not take this product. Heritol, the preferred selection or solution for selective hearing.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to use that last week or this week, or last time or this time, and I went with this time because it sort of re-emphasizes this point. Like, there's a very different set of there's a very different way of thinking and way of being for men than there is for women, right? And it's very easy for us to end up in conflict because of that. Men tend to not pick up on details or hints or clues or anything that isn't obvious. I mean, it's true, right? We tend to not listen, whereas wives tend to really want to be listened to. Their primary need for women is to be loved. They want to be valued. They want to be cherished. They want to be told how important they are and how valuable they are. They want you to remember important holidays and, emphasize their significance. Whereas husbands need to be respected in the same way that wives need to be loved. And so as we've talked about, this love thing, or the respect thing, it's very easy to say, well, I don't respect you. Right? Well, you haven't earned my respect, and one of the things he's talked about over and over again is this idea that it would be, this is roughly equivalent to saying, well, you haven't earned my love. I don't love you, you don't deserve love, or what have you. It's just not right. Men need respect. It's who we are. It's built into sort of our identity. And they're just not earned, they're needed. This is a need. In review real quick, last week or the last few weeks we talked about the acronym for women. Couple. Has anybody done any of these, by the way? Men? Or women want to brag on their husbands? Closeness, which is, what is closeness?
Communicating. Being next to each other. Being intimate.
It's sort of that intimacy. It's that intentionally engaging each other, right? Openness is talking. Understanding is trying very hard to validate and connect with feelings. Right? So the other person she talks and you listen, say things like, "Oh, that must be difficult," or
Really hard.
But you, instead of offering advice, you listen and it's not about the nail, honey. That must be hard. Peacemaking, which means taking the first steps to end conflict. Loyalty, demonstrating your connection and your ongoing commitment to your marriage and your relationship. And esteem, demonstrating how important she is to you. I would really recommend, and I'm going to actually tack them up on the wall at my desk so I remember. Because for me, if I don't think about these things, I don't do them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What's esteem again?
Esteem is where you demonstrate how important she is to you. So it's things like the obvious ones would be remembering your birthday without being reminded. But it's other things. It's remembering what's important to her. It's going out of your way to show that she's important. It's going out of your way to demonstrate like your affection for her and things like that. That would be esteem. Like how she is above all else in your life. And it's important. Women very much need that. Like it's built into them. It's designed like as a part of their creative being, because you know they were meant to be like valued. I mean, the first encounter, we talked about that with Adam. The first encounter Adam has with Eve, he recites a poem. He breaks out in a song like, "Hey, you were," you know, talks about how wonderful she was and how beautiful she was and all that. And men do that well when they're dating, and we get less and less good at it the longer we're married. And we get selective hearing, which is also a part of that esteem thing. So, as it relates to men, we're going to start talking about respect. So the next few weeks we're going to talk about like respect and esteeming men, or like the things that men need in this like equation. Are you all ready for this? Hey, the guys have gotten it pretty hard the last month, right? I mean, I've been pretty tough, so it's, yeah. For men, like contempt is heavily connected to tone and facial expression and gestures and so forth. Like men pick on each other constantly. That was actually something that stood out to me at Mark's bachelor party. Like if you sit in a room full of guys, we will tear each other up, right? And we'll do it with a twinkle in our eye and a little smile, and we'll trade knocks back and forth. Or we can sit down and we can argue about an idea, and we'll argue about it for, you know, an hour, and like it never goes beyond that. We don't get ticked off at each other. We don't punch each other. We don't, not usually. I guess sometimes it goes that far, but you know, everybody was armed at Mark's party and nobody got shot. Some vegetables blew up, but like that's a whole other conversation.
That was pretty cool though.
Yes. But like men, we can knock on each other like and be disrespectful and be nasty and make fun and everything else, and like for the most part it doesn't really affect us, right? Now part of what he talks about, like the guy who put this material together, he talks about like part of the reason that we do this is because the way we come at each other is different. Men have kind of an honor code about us, the way that we deal with each other. So like when we, you know, pick on each other, we don't take a tone of voice. We don't wag our finger, you know. We don't, you know, our facial expressions, just our whole like way of being, the way we carry ourselves, like it's teasing, but it's respectful. Does that make sense? I guess the way I would liken it, I have 2 dogs, and the dogs fight with each other like they're not trying to kill each other, and they know they're not trying to kill each other, right? Because the way that they do it is the way they do it, you know, and they understand that that's the way it is. The difference when it comes to men and women is women tend to like be a little more expressive, and they tend to not as quickly understand this like honor code way of being. Does that make sense? And so the tone of voice will change in the direction that men tend to find offensive, you know, or the hand gestures or the facial expressions, or one of the things he suggests is like that wives, you know, if you go and you stand in the bathroom and you think through everything you said in the last argument you had, just do it to the mirror and look at your demeanor. And like you really quickly will pick up what men pick up. Like for us, we can knock on each other constantly, but if we do it in the right way, it's all right. Assuming we don't go too far, and even then, like we usually are pretty quick to forgive each other, right? Am I, guys? You with me? What makes it? We'll get into why this is, but for women, when women get angry, like they engage. Right? They want to have a conversation, they want to have a confrontation, they want to deal with it, right? Men, we just don't do that. We respond to that like sort of facial expression, the whole 9 yards. Like we tend to respond to it as being very disrespectful. We tend to respond to it as being demeaning or controlling or what have you. And like the response you're always going to get from a man if you talk to him that way is he's going to shut down and he's going to get angry. Or he's going to get angry and he's going to shut down, right? And it is really easy to accomplish because men are very much about respect. One of the questions he asks is, for wives, like if you talk to your husband, is there anybody in his life that talks to him that way? right? Like, or treats him that way. Like, if there's nobody else in his life that would talk to him in the way that you're talking to him, like with the tone and sort of the demeanor and like sort of this contempt that comes with it, like there's a reason he's getting mad at you, because like he's most vulnerable with you. Does that make sense? Wow, it's quiet. I need.
Or if
I
there
have a
is,
question though.
Yes.
So, like, why do they pick up on all of our facial expressions and everything when we're mad, but not when we're excited about something and are trying to, like, I guess, and it's totally obviously, like, I'm thinking that, you know, by wanting to talk to him about something that is including him in my life and respectful by saying, well, I'd really like to go to marriage class, can we do that? I feel like that's respectful by asking him, like, and that's a happy, in my eyes, happy conversation. Like, why don't guys pick up on
Well,
that?
John has an answer, and I'm going to let him answer first.
because for most guys, anger is like a fallback emotion for us, and we're very well versed in it. So it's easier for us to, you know, it's easier for you to know what's going to happen in a particular TV show if you've been watching the series for a long time. That's kind of like guys with anger. We know what to lock for because that's one of the emotions that we deal with.
We're good
all
at
the
that
time.
one. There is some that is kind of well, and there's a couple of components to that actually. I think John is right on there. Men tend to be very. One of the things we're going to talk about today is hierarchy. Men understand hierarchy, right? Again, I hate comparing us to dogs, but like if you ever own multiple dogs and bring a new one in, what do?
Piece of crap.
Or the new one comes in and beats the crap out of everyone else until they establish who's top dog, right? Like, and they just do it. And men very much do that. Like, we establish dominance and social dominance and all this. You go to a place of work and like where you are on the totem pole is important, right? Who's the boss? And like actually men will, if you know what your responsibility is and you know what your job is and you know what your role is and everything else, men are pretty content to be in that spot. Anger and all that, like a lot of times men tend to receive that as like this challenge of like, hey, you know, I'm going to be in control now and you're going to listen. Does that make sense? It's blue sunglasses talk is really what it comes down to. The other thing is, and we talked about this before, for men, something like a marriage book or like a suggestion, hey, we need to work on our relationship, it's roughly the equivalent of bringing home a diet book for your wife. You know, like it's this, you know, men, oh, you're not doing this feelings stuff right, so we're going to work on it until you get it right. Oh, gosh, you know, now I get to hear about what I'm doing wrong. And it may not even be that they're doing something wrong, but it's like the car thing. When I buy a car, I don't want to maintenance it. You know, I want to have it for 5 years before I got to take it to the shop to have something replaced. If 5 years, I want 10, you know. Which is why I drive a Toyota, not a Dodge. But the point being, men engage with those things differently. I hear what you're saying, like, it almost seems counterintuitive, but it is very much about the angry thing. Like we understand anger, like we get that. We understand respect, we get that. We're less excited and we're less gushy. I don't know how to explain that. Like the things that we get excited about aren't usually the same things that women get excited about. Like,
Well, I more or less meant like just saying like, okay, well, I'm going, just let you know, like this week I'd like to go to women's Bible study and youth group and whatever else you're doing that week, go to Christmas stroll. Like, I guess I more meant like that's us telling you so that like we're having a conversation so you can say, well, no, I don't want you to go to women's Bible study or whatever. But like then it's like if we don't, and you're like, okay, whatever, I don't care. And then if we don't tell you, why didn't you tell me you're going to youth group? Or you know, like that's what more I was saying, like not excited. I guess I was just saying about.
so why don't we pick on normal things? Because men are clueless and we don't listen. Like we just don't communicate. That's not how we're geared. I want to know what's going on, but I don't need to control it. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's helpful. That's is a little more of a tough question. So I'm going to put that in the I sort of don't know. I do know why we respond to disrespect and anger. Like, I got that nailed. But it is, some of that is a selective listening thing. We're just not as communicative. We just don't do that. Not our wheelhouse. Yeah. So a big part of the respect thing is about approaching with respect and tone, and like in an appearance, like it's huge as far as our sense of being respected. Like when you converse with us, if you talk to us in a way that's demeaning or down or like condescending or whatever, you're just like, you'll just deflate us. Like men, you can watch them deflate, like, and or shut down, or and then a big part of that is because like not only do we need to be respected, but we tend to be vulnerable with our wives. And we're vulnerable in a way that we're not vulnerable with anyone else in the whole wide world, and we don't want to be, because like everything is connected to you. And we'll talk about that as we go through like the male acronym. Another big thing is is that like we're all about what we do. I was reading, and actually you can watch children play, but like I was reading about, they were talking about this experiment that was done with boys and girls, little boys and girls. They put them in front of a mirror, and if you put a room full of little girls, like one at a time, in front of a mirror, they'll talk to each other, to themselves basically. They stand in front of the mirror and they talk, or they look at how I've got photos of Abby standing in front of a wall mirror, and she's like posing, and like, and she stood there and she talked to herself and she posed and she touched herself and everything else. And like, whereas the boys, they would put them in front of the mirror and they might talk for a minute or two, but like within just a very short amount of time, they start shooting at themselves or jumping up and down or pretending to be airplanes or, whatever. I suspect there are a lot of guys, the first time they bought a gun, they stood in front of the mirror with it for about 30 minutes. Because Mark laughed. With that British rifle, right?
Yeah.
Hey, whatever, man. You all do it. It's okay. But it's because men tend to be, we're instrumental. We're about what we do. Does that make sense? And actually, that's sort of built into the Garden of Eden, like you see where God puts Adam on the earth, and what's he there to do? Garden. Yeah, he's there to work, and that's what he does. We'll talk about that more in a second. But like men are all about what they do, and they need to be appreciated for it and respected for it. This is not the same thing as love. Like we talk about love, but it's not the same thing as respect. Like respect is a very different conversation. It's about appreciation and that sort of thing. The acronym for men is CHAIRS. I have no idea why it's chairs and not something cooler, but you all got couple. We got chairs. What is that? But I'm gonna quick summary.
It could have hairs.
It could be hairs. I think it's one letter too few. Men need to be appreciated for their desire to work and achieve, right? Their desire to protect and provide, to be strong and lead or / make decisions. Like these are things they need to be appreciated for and respected for. Their desire to analyze and counsel, that nail thing, like that's what we do well. And it's easy to say, oh well, all you ever want to do is fix. But like that's the other end of it is like that is, you're right, that's what we want to do. That's what we're good at, and like it's something that we should be appreciated for, not just like knocked on. Desire for shoulder to shoulder friendship. Women tend to communicate, men do stuff together. We want to, play Xbox, or we want to hunt, or I don't know, build furniture, whatever men do.
There's your chair.
Yes, chairs. We build furniture. And men have this, they want to be respected and desired for their need for sexual intimacy. It's very easy to downplay that or kind of turn it into something less than, or like, of course it's that. That's all men ever want. But that is actually it's frustrating for men. Conquest is the first one. See? Yeah. I have a video. Actually, for this, I'm not sure what it says about...
I'm pretty sure this might have cavemen in it.
No, actually, I went through this and I looked at it and I went back and forth, and the difficulty I found was all of the funny videos related to men were hugely, all they do is make fun of men. There's no nuance to it at all. which is very funny. Like, comedy and humor tends to treat women in a very different way than it does men. Men, like, there's no interest in what we think or feel or anything.
Because if you treated women in humor the way they treated men, women would get so ticked off by it.
We take your guts.
So we are not, the next couple of videos are not funny. I'm sorry. But I went through back and forth, and I had to settle on this one. I figured it was one that would be appreciated locally.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, then dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then painting from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tempt the pink-combed pullets, who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk, somebody who'd bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
It's a Dodge commercial. So there you go. This was originally aired during the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember seeing it.
for the first time, right?
Actually, it wasn't. I remember when Paul
Well-
Harvey did it over the radio.
Yeah, the first.
How'd you react to it?
I was cleaning the hog house.
Well, but here's the question. I think I'm actually in a room full of men who have all been farmers at some point, right? Or done farm work at some point. Adam less so than everyone else. But he's done harvest, yeah. So like when you listen to that and you're talking about the work and everything else, like how does that hit you?
Makes me proud of what I do.
Right? Jim? John? Like it's I don't farm, but I saw this on the Super Bowl a few years ago. I swear to you, everybody who is on my Montana friends list posted that in their feed. Like every one of them on Facebook. Like it was just
there's
there.
a bunch of Montana people in that one?
Oh, I'm not surprised because
They're cousins to the Roths.
really, that's awesome. They're up here. Cool. So, like the reason I started with this is, as it relates to Conquest, Conquest is what we do, right? We work, we accomplish, we achieve, and men are proud of what they do, right? And there's a unique pride that comes with the work that we do, and like sort of this connection that goes beyond just beyond anything actually. Like when men meet each other, what's one of the first questions we ask?
What do you do?
Right? Because what we do is important. We have to be proud of what we do. We have to have a great deal of like connection with what we do. And actually, it's the reason I picked this, because it speaks right to that, right? You know, what farmers do is noble. You know, and folks want to be told what you do is important. What you do is good. What you do is, you know, is valuable. You know, it cuts to who we are. It is part of how God designed us. We were designed to work in the field. And we're instrumental. Like we need something to do, and we're very action oriented. And like at the core of who we are, when we talk about respect, men need to be respected for like our occupations, right? Wives if you want to make your man feel good, and like you feel when he writes love letters and brings flowers, like talk about what he does in a way that is like impressed or respectful, and do it like regularly, and like so he believes you. Right? You have to wait a few days, because if you do it like on the way home. But it is the truth. Like men will forever, and there's sort of a cross section here. Men will forever and ever like be about their work. Even after they retire, men will oftentimes still be about their work. How many retired farmers?
Never retire?
They never
retire. Yeah, or people who should be retired still go out and hang out while harvest is happening, right? And they have to be right there. And a lot of times when men retire, they just die because they run out of like this central driving purpose. That's it. My father's retired 3 or 4 times now. He retires and he goes back to work, and he retires and he goes back to work. And now that he's retired, it's like he still works. Like he still researches software, and he's still, just all these things. It's like he's still working. Guy sends out 40 emails a day. And I appreciate them. They're all fantastic. No, sure, I really do. My dad finds some of those interesting things. He doesn't watch these. He's not watching these. And so men need to be appreciated for it, and they have this constant need for appreciation. The sort of antithesis of that is with wives. Wives tend to be more inclined and tend to be more driven toward care, right? Wives tend to be most like in their element, caring for and loving, and they have this need to be loved, and they chase after sort of this perfect love and this fairy tale of the perfect happily ever after life, and the reality is that becomes this insatiable thing, right? And it's back and forth. That's the curse on men, right? Men will work the field by the toil of their, the sweat of their brow and the breaking of their back or what have you, like the curse that they receive. And women receive the desire for their husbands. And a lot of times, statistically, women often leave their husbands because they don't feel like they're being loved perfectly in the way they deserve. And in reality, like we talked about that in the first half, this drawing closer to each other, the rest of married life, all of married life is about this refining process, and it will never be perfect, right? And so you will spend forever and ever learning to love each other better, and learning to respect what your husband does better, and appreciate him in this way better. And it's just eternal. And that's good because for the same reason it's not good, it's because we live in a fallen world, but it gives us something to pursue in the same way that we pursue holiness, right? None of us will ever be perfect until we enter heaven. We're going to struggle with sin for the rest of our lives. In the same way, sin will make it so that we struggle in our marriage for the rest of our lives. But in struggle, we draw closer. If we choose to struggle and draw closer, otherwise we can grow apart. But thoughts on this? Anybody want to challenge me on that assertion? Or anybody experience that? I'm waiting for Jim and Marla to say, no, we don't fight.
Very rarely.
It's perfect.
Ask John if we fight.
I'm not doing that. So as a part of what men need, I think, I don't know, all of y'all went to high school, right? It's that cheer.
This is a bad example.
This is actually a fantastic example. Men, to a degree, men need a cheerleader, right? And that's something that happens.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Actually, but you notice that your instant response is to condemn the natural reaction of men. And so
we can't all be Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Nor would I want you to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. I think you're beautiful and wonderful the way you are, but that's not the point.
Broncos.
This got away from me really quickly. When your team is named after horses, you don't really want to compare your cheerleader to your mascot. My college mascot was the Trolls, okay? And so It was great going to the volleyball games. You know, like, go Lady Trolls. You know?
We had to wear buckskins and coonskin caps.
Did you? Wait a minute, what? What school did you?
Pioneers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What this means is it's not, well, actually there's some parallel there, right? Like, what's the cheerleader's job?
Build the team up.
Yeah, to build the team up, to encourage. When they're doing badly, the cheerleaders are supposed to encourage them, right? When they're doing well, they're supposed to congratulate them. Like, that's the job of the
That's
cheerleader.
why the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders have such a hard job.
Because they
Yeah, but you notice most of cheerleaders are always women.
No, and that is the case, and it is the case for a reason. It's because, like, the cultural archetype. I realize I was about to get into deep water there.
They're wired that way.
What?
They're wired that way.
That's what I said. What's behind this is, so when you are dating, right? When you are dating, women tend to be more encouraging. And they tend to be more excited about the things that their boyfriends do. They tend to be happy that he has a job. They tend to be encouraging, and like the cheering part is natural. Like at that point, and it tends to peter out as time goes, right? Like it tends to just sort of run out of gas as sort of a part of the ongoing process of marriage. Like it just goes away. But men need that. Men need to be encouraged when they're struggling. Men need to be cheered on when they're doing well, or congratulated when they achieve. And it's very easy to lose sight of that. The example he uses in the talk about this that I watched, he talks about the wife who will yell at her husband, you don't love me, you always pick work over me. I don't care that you got a promotion, you don't really, care about us at all. Well, in reality, men express care by like working. Like it's the center of who we are. If you like deride what I do or make fun of what I do, you're just going to take the wind out of my sails, right? Another example that I saw was where husband and wife are doing a tour of a house for a coworker, and about midway through walking around this new house that they had furnished, she turns to her husband and said, "You need to get a second job." And like they didn't talk again for 3 days because he's like, well, what I do isn't good enough. And in reality, like men need to be proud of what they do, and they need to feel like their wives are proud of what they do. One of the best examples I've seen of this around here, actually, I'm going to pick on Teal. Teal, like I've seen her like talk about her husband's craftsmanship as a carpenter, and she like gushes about it. I've never seen anybody gush about carpentry. Like, and how good of a job he does as a contractor, and how good he is at his job, and how proud she is of the work that he does. And I mean, she just went on and on and on, and like, that's awesome. Like, but that would be an example of that. Like men, Adam, do you appreciate that? Men need to feel like what they do is something people are proud of, or that their wives are proud of, and that their wives appreciate. This isn't to say that women should not or cannot work. Rather, like what this is saying is that men, like we have to work, right? If we don't work, it takes something away from us. We're less when we don't work. Like it's not just a job, it's a calling in the end, right? Tim Allen said, wives or women have wonderful lives now, right? They can choose to work, or they can choose to stay home, or they can choose to do these things. Men can choose to work or go to jail. Like, that's it, that's it, it's built into us. And even today, like if you look at statistically, when young women are they're going through college or planning on getting a career, and they're looking to get married, they tend to look for men who are going to make a lot of money so that they can get married, and if they decide they want to, they can.
Stay at home.
Yes, because they're not dumb. It's never assumed like, oh look, I'll marry this man because he's wonderful, even though he's an art major. And he's never going to work. And I have a philosophy degree. And he's never going to work, but I'll take care of him. That's not usually the way that women think, right? Like men need to work. It's part of who we are.
If they do marry them, they're probably thinking that they'll get a job eventually.
Yeah, or I'll change him.
Yeah.
For me, for the longest time, Jess and I, when we were married, About a week before I got married, or we got married, I got fired from my job. And so like, we actually talked about not getting married. We did, and we were already dirt poor, but we were suddenly much poorer, and we lived in a spare bedroom at my parents' house for about 6 months. And I love my parents, but it was very hard, like as a husband, to like suddenly be in this place where I couldn't provide for my wife, like for the first 6 months we were married. That was awful. Like, that was really awful. And one of my biggest fears in life for years and years was losing a job and not being able to provide. Because it's, it's in the core of who we are. Like, it cuts men like all the way through to not be able to provide for their families. Appreciation of work can be as simple as like writing a note or saying, I appreciate how hard you work. I feel secure in the knowledge that you're taking care of us, or that you're, that you go out every day and you do things so that, or thank you for working hard, or like anything along those lines. I mean, it's important to do it consistently and to do it like genuinely. Does that make sense? Because like men need to hear it. They need to know, and like if you wanna make your husband feel great, like every day, or not every day, but regularly, I appreciate how hard you work. I appreciate, you as a conqueror, you as this central manly quality of work. Hierarchy, another serious video. Could not find a funny one. But there's a funny piece to this. And I'll see if you guys can catch it.
Dove Men Plus Care. Real strength.
Anybody catch the joke? It's not just that, actually. Like, all right, so the Dove.
Yeah, I was thinking of, his eyes look rapey. Something fresh out of Mordor.
So like something fresh out of Mordor. Actually, that's the funny thing with the Dove women commercials. They like nailed it as far as women are concerned, right? I mean, I don't know much about women, but I know women don't think they're pretty enough, and they always doubt themselves. Even if we think they're beautiful, they always think that they're not, right? Like, and they nailed it. But they like show all of this stuff with men, and well, like me and Jim are the only dads then. But like I watch this, and this kind of this just. I think of my kids, and I think about the first time I picked up Abby when she fell down and was crying, and I think about when she comes up and curls up in bed with me and tells me how much she appreciates me and how safe she feels with me in the room, and that's just, man, that's it, right? But what makes men feel awesome and what makes men feel inspired by this is not a shower, but it's also showing that you care is what makes you strong. And that's really not what men are at all. We're not about showing that we care. What's impressive about this is
Protector.
Protector is what it comes down to. Provider and protector. That's what my little girl, I'm dad, I'm provider and protector. And I want her to always know that. It's not, hey, let me tell you about my feelings. But Dove just totally blew it. In relation to hierarchy, men see themselves in terms of ranking, very often. We understand the function, we understand and function well in hierarchy. So I don't know, military is a good example of this, right? You've got people who have different ranks and they have different jobs and they do their jobs. I'm guessing when the Williams farm does harvest, right? Everybody has a job, and like you do your job, right? And you're happy with your job. Like it's good to know your position, right? And a lot of times guys will look at the guy and over them in the hierarchy and say, man, I'm glad I don't have to do everything you have to do. I get to go home at night. You have to stay here late. You know, we function well in our position. And I'll tell you, like we appreciate being appreciated for our spot in the hierarchy. I worked for a guy for several years at the children's home who on a regular basis would sit down and say to me, you know what you did last week was fantastic. We would not have pulled off this and we would not have done this and this wouldn't have happened right if it wasn't for you. Or, oh, your involvement in this thing, let me tell you, these guys don't get along. I don't know what you did to make those guys get along, but you are like awesome. You're indispensable. You know, or, oh, hey, in this situation, man, you really nailed that. Like, you know, this place wouldn't work the same without you, right? Understanding that we're important and we operate in a hierarchy, men do that well. In our homes, it generally means like we need to feel honored. We need to be appreciated and valued for our position within the family. We'll tend to do anything for like other men who will like enhance that value for us or encourage that value for us. Like with our kids even. There are things I do with Abby, right, that I cannot believe I sit and have tea parties, right? Like I dress up and have tea parties.
You wear a top and a suit.
Hey, whatever you
I
laugh.
can imagine you wearing like a flowery apron with a hat.
I do have a flowery apron. Mrs. Nesbitt.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Not Mrs. Doubtfire.
I was thinking of the Doritos commercial.
Hey, you wait. You wait, buddy. It's gonna happen. But being appreciated for our position, like men will do all sorts of crazy things when they feel appreciated, right? And the most obvious place you see that is with your kids, like especially when they're young. They appreciate you and they respect you and they love you and you can do no wrong in their eyes and they, you know, the sun sets and rises by your whim, you know, kind of thing. And like Jim, isn't it true? Like it's awesome having boys that look up to you, you know, and who want to like do everything you do. One of my favorite bits in this commercial is where the guy's shaving and the little boy starts shaving with him, because I remember doing that like with Legos as a kid, like climbing up next to my dad and shaving in the thing with a Lego, like doing the same thing, because we want to be like dad, you know, and it's that esteem and that you are the top dog kind of thing. Because women confront and connect, like when women, they feel neglected or they feel left out or they feel, you know, like they need attention, they'll go and they'll have a conversation about it. And a lot of times that can be an edgier or like heavier tone or what have you. Men perceive that like as an attack on our position and an attempt to control. Sometimes you'll hear men say, hey, I already have one mom, right? You should never actually say that to your wife, Mark. We were lying when we talked about that. Everything else was true. Never tell your wife, I already have one mom.
You've already done it, haven't you?
With all the good advice we gave you, we slipped one or two bits of bad advice in just to see. And I think John suggested that.
No, I distinctly remember saying
nothing. He said nothing.
Almost all of that advice coming from you.
I don't think that's right. Gabe gave a lot of advice. And her dad.
My dad only referenced stuff you told him.
Oh, he betrayed us, did he? Men have a desire, like this built-in desire to like protect and provide, right? Which kind of goes hand in hand with our we must do thing, right? Like we have to work and we have to be involved and we have to be action oriented. Well, in the same way, like we want to provide for our families and we want to protect. This is something that actually, to a degree, has become almost a punchline in popular culture. The idea of men protecting their families, like it's almost a joke, and it's not the way men think. It's just not. There's a reason like women and children first is a thing, right? Like it's a thing because like men will, our attitude is, well, I would rather die than step in and like take the place of somebody who, my wife or children or what have you. Like I would rather die than let them like be hurt. And that's kind of like the thing that drives that. Like we are by nature men protect. Does anybody have a Bible? Yeah. 1 Timothy 5:8 sort of nails down the basic idea here. How men perceive hierarchy. This is Paul writing to Timothy.
I have it. You want me to read it?
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Like, so Paul goes so far as to say, hey, if you do not take care of your family, right, and those who are in your family, particularly your household, you are not following Jesus, and you're pretty much a non-believer. Like, I mean, does that kind of put it into perspective? Like, men take this very seriously. Like, it is our job, it is who we are. We have trouble respecting people who will not take care of their family. And we want to be respected as providers and protectors. We want to be looked up to in this regard. Like, this is of prime importance to us. This is a sense of responsibility.
Just
it's not.
right on that.
What?
That's why I think our government, in their infinite wisdom, letting women do everything in the military.
Oh yeah, that actually was just this week.
Yeah.
With the addition of women to all combat roles. And like one of the big arguments against that is men in combat with women will tend to like change how they act to protect the women around them. Like they don't fight normal. They like tend to protect the women around them, like because it's just what they perceive as their job. Like
It's instinctual.
yeah, and it's very much built into the core of who we are. We protect women. That's what we're made to do. This is a sense of responsibility, not a right. Like it sometimes can be seen from the outside as like this right or this like desire to dominate. You see this a lot of time when we talk about biblical headship, like the man is the head of the household, this idea. It's like, well, that's not right. Like men can't control us and force us to, and that's not the idea here. It's not about control. It's not about dominance. It's not about any of these things. We don't see it that way. We don't see it as this right we have. It's a responsibility. I don't get to work. Like I have to work. Does that make sense? Like I don't ever have the option of staying home and like watching TV, though it would be nice. We feel responsible to provide and protect. This, like one of the things that especially makes this difficult is like men tend to be very independent, and if you challenge our independence, how do we respond?
We get angry.
That's right, because we don't like, we have very few like switches.
Oh, smash!
Mike, smash. The thing is, so like like when you talk to a man and you challenge his position, or you challenge his you challenge him in any way, like he tends to respond or disrespectful to him, he'll tend to just get angry and shut down, or get angry and just be angry. And like a lot of times that like challenging those roles and challenging what he sees as his responsibility will result in men just becoming angry and feeling controlled and becoming like sort of bucking against it. And that can be perceived as sort of this dominance or this like intent to subdue those around us. Though there are men who are horrible and do that. So like there's my disclaimer. Men are extremely vulnerable on this topic. If like one of the best ways, wives, if you want to really hurt your husband, tell him that he's doing a bad job at taking care of you, or tell him like that he's not providing for you properly, or compare what he is doing or how he's providing to someone else. Is another. That guy down, or this husband down the street, his job is good enough to bring home these things, or they get to go to Hawaii, or they get to, like that is, Like it's a great way to like really dig into a man because he
Because
like
guys already do it anyway.
this is true, but it's different. Like it is a different thing for another guy to compare his employment to mine than for my wife to say it, right?
Oh yeah.
It is because I'm providing for my wife, and if she denigrates what I do, then it's bad. It's very hurtful. We often get angry and frustrated in response to careless treatment of this area. Like, so if you downplay what a man does, or you speak lightly of his job, or you make fun of it, or what have you, or even if you like just speak loosely about it, like men can be very, very touchy as it relates to this. I don't want to say sensitive.
Men aren't sensitive.
Because we're not sensitive.
Right.
We're very touchy as it relates to this. And like, one of the examples, he said this, not me, okay? But he talked about how sometimes he would counsel with women and like, the wife would say, well, I thought he was supposed to be manly, and I thought he was supposed to, this is so like feminine of him to be, like sensitive about this, well, at the end of the day, it's like, it's very much the core of us. And so that's part of what like it's gonna be. Men need to feel adequate and respected according to their place in the hierarchy. Very important. So if you're going to do this, acknowledge and appreciate like that your husband provides and protects. Like if you're going to like take this role, if you're going to take this seriously, it involves like acknowledging and like encouraging. Talk about admiring him for it. Like, believe it or not, men want to be admired. Like one of the best things a father can tell his son is, proud of you, right? I've talked to young men who would like do anything to get their dads to say that to them. I'm proud of you, because like that sense of like our ability and all that. I mean, like it's right in the center of us. Tell them you respect him for being a provider or protector. Like these things are important, right? Men tend to sacrifice a great deal as a part of work. We tend to do things that we don't want to do. Sometimes we give up our pride. Sometimes we give up things that we want in order to like provide, and being appreciated for it is huge for men. The last part we're going to go through very quickly. This is the his needs, her needs stuff. And we're going to review and just do a quick overview of the next half of the material, or the last half. We've talked about the love bank so far. What's the love bank? Everyone's forgotten.
Pennies in and they fall out on the floor.
Yeah, you put pennies in and they fall out on the floor. What is it?
It's the good things that you pour into your relationship.
Or the bad things you do to take out. Like it's the goodwill, bad will that you build up, right? And like the physiological like feeling of love or affection is a product of like having your needs met. The more you meet needs within a marriage or a relationship, the more you feel loved, right? Or like you feel love toward the other person, or attachment toward the other person. You'll see this where men and women work together and they have conversations, and it's like, well, my wife doesn't listen to me like my coworker listens to me. And eventually like he has a crush on her because like there's this like meeting of need that sometimes doesn't happen after marriage has gone on for a little while. We talked about love busters, which are anything that makes withdrawals from the relationship or from the love bank. That is selfish demands, like in arguing, it's selfish demands, disrespectful judgments, and angry outbursts. Have any of y'all like noticed this or talked about this at all, like since we talked about it?
Yes.
I know, I'm trying, honey, I'm doing better.
We talked about this in the League of Seattle.
Yes, quite a bit. The other ones we talked about were annoying habits, dishonesty, and independent behavior, which again, annoying habits are what they are, but like they make withdrawals from love bank, like if you leaving your underwear in the fridge. What? That would be an annoying habit that might upset your wife. Is Mark on the floor?
Yes.
Oh, you dropped your wedding ring?
Yeah. I have a bad habit of playing with it constantly. I've almost lost it 2 or 3 times.
It's not just me.
Okay.
Say that.
Not sharing your feelings.
Wedding ring is an unforgivable sin.
No, it's not. I've lost mine dozens of times.
You want straight about this? $60, Walmart.
Nice.
$28.
Hey, they make silicone ones that you can wear like when you're working on machinery and stuff, so that like you don't get your fingers torn off by equipment.
That's kind of cool.
I'll send you a link.
Eric, that's how Eric loses his. He takes his off.
Yeah, I took mine off. And I worked in a factory once, and I met a guy who was missing all the fingers on the one hand, and it was because his wedding ring got caught in like a burr and steel strapping that went by, and it pulled his hand into the machine and just cut all his fingers off.
Oh.
And then he won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the company because the foreman told him not to call an ambulance, and at the end of the shift, I'll drive you to the hospital. And so he sat there like with his fingers in it. And he got several $1 million out of the deal. So
And was still working.
I don't know. Men really need to work. Even though he couldn't hold things in his hands anymore, it's, yeah. It was a very eye-opening experience. I do not wear jewelry around equipment or cars or anything. So, annoying habits, independent behavior, and secrets and dishonesty are all other love busters. And then we talked about the policies last time, which is radical honesty. Radical honesty is being honest no matter what, like telling things even if they're like difficult, and being like upfront. This is kind of a controversial idea, but it's really important because it keeps you out of trouble. Like if suddenly you are attracted to the neighbor and you say, hey, I suddenly have sort of romantic attraction toward the neighbor, like I wanted to let you know we need to like make some adjustments in our life so we don't have her over for dinner or him over for dinner. Like that might hurt in the immediate, but it hurts a heck of a lot less than an affair might, right? And so that sort of openness and honesty like is important. It has to come with sort of a safety agreement that like, hey, I'm going to tell you stuff you're not going to like, but it means you can't murder me, right?
So we're supposed to be honest about our habits or annoying habits?
Oh, well, annoying habits, if the other person has habits that annoy you and they drive you to the point of insanity, yeah, it's kind of important to say, hey, could you
should
not?
probably take your shoes off.
Oh, here's where that gets tricky though. Like, if you have a long enough list of annoying habits, you can like wreck your marriage. I mean, like, you really can.
You have to prioritize.
Yeah, I think
It's true.
if it bothers you enough, you should be honest about it. Yeah, that's my opinion. Enthusiastic agreement is before you make major decisions, you agree on it completely. It means you don't come home with a new car without discussing it with your spouse. You don't accept a job like, you know, in Antarctica without talking about it first. Or undivided attention, which means that you should spend 14 hours a week paying attention to each other. Like doing one of the top 4 emotional needs things.
That's 28 times more than the average fee.
Yeah, the average is about a half an hour, right? Yeah, so it's 20 a week, but that's 14 hours a week. But like when you look at this 14 hours a week, that 14 hours a week can be spent doing any of the top 4 items on the list, which we'll get to in a little bit. And when you start looking at the top 4 items, it suddenly looks like a much better option. Actually, I really do believe in the 14 hours a week. It seems like an awful lot, but once you start figuring it out and you start dividing it up throughout the week, like it means that you sit down and have a conversation after work every day, right? It means that you like.
I can do that.
It means that you like do things that are fun together.
I can do that.
It means you have sex regularly.
I can do that.
I wasn't going to go that far, but you made me do it. So when we get into his needs, her needs, there are some basic concepts that need to be addressed and understood. Inside everyone is sort of a giver and a taker, right? There's 2 halves to your personality. When you date and when you're first married, your giver is like totally in the driver's seat because all your emotional needs are being met. You're totally happy to meet the other person's emotional needs as much as like they want. So you have conversations all the time and like you tend to be very affectionate and huggy and, you know, hold hands and, you know, you spend time doing fun things together. As you get further into your relationship, it gets very easy to stop meeting the major needs in favor, you know, like because we just don't do them naturally. Men do not have conversations easily, right? Men don't enjoy cuddling as much as women do. We don't. We do enjoy sex, right?
Amen.
But like, you're making this very difficult, Mark. But the most common way you see this create trouble is as it relates to sex, because women like affection tend to like affection more than they enjoy sex. Men tend to enjoy sex more than they enjoy affection. And I don't remember who it was who said it, but like when I first mentioned this, somebody said, well, yeah, but there's more fun stuff to do than be affectionate. We jump right to the main event now, you know? But in reality, if you do that enough times, suddenly like the wife's not getting all of her emotional needs met, and then she becomes less interested. And it becomes harder and harder to like get to the main event, and suddenly like there's conflict, right? Because what happens is the giver, who says, yes, I will happily meet all your emotional needs, gets replaced by the taker, which is the part of you that says, hey, what about me? You know, like, are we going to have conversations, or are you just going to watch TV? Or are we going to, you know, do something together, or are we just going to sit around and talk? You know, and there are lots of, shut up, Mark. There are lots of ways this manifests, and there are ways that people will manipulate their relationship in order to, like, get what they want without having to meet each other's needs. Like, it's very common for women to be very affectionate in public, and like you know, very hands-on and very like touchy and all that in public, so that their husbands will touch them and be cuddly with them, but they don't want to have sex when they get home. Like, meet my need, and we're in public, so it ain't going anywhere. But now that we're home, like, oh, I have a headache. And like, it's sort of this manipulative, like, taker way of saying, well, you're going to meet my need, and like, you have fun with yours. Mark, you are a child, buddy. Like, making my life so much more difficult.
You know where you were thinking it.
I was not. Hey, honey, can you give me a glass of water? My taker says, I am a master sandwich maker, I will have you know. Every relationship, like, so you'll have this giver and taker thing. And like, the objective is to get to the point where you're sort of in this cycle where your givers are in charge. But it's almost never the case except for when you're courting. Like, it's really hard to get there. But like, it involves paying attention to that, like, meeting my partner's emotional needs. And you have to be super intentional about it. And it's going to ebb and flow, and it's going to be difficult. There are 3 stages of marital intimacy, right? It's another important concept. It's intimacy, which means like very close connection or established connection, where you feel close to each other. Everybody's getting their needs met. Everybody's feelings are super positive and wonderful, and like, you're in intimate connection. Withdrawal is where you tend to like, that's that stage of the relationship where you aren't talking and you're not meeting each other's needs, right? Like, and you'll go through periods of this without necessarily it being about bad will or conflict. It's just, you know, we're busy and so we're not talking. Or we're busy and so we aren't having sex. Or we're busy so we're not doing anything but watching TV together. First children, or actually newborn children, tend to do this to you. Where you just don't have conversations anymore because you're so stinking tired. Anyway, so you have these stages, and then the third one is conflict. Conflict is when you go through periods where you're just fighting with each other because you're not meeting each other's needs, and like, it's not okay, right? And so you begin to like fight over, well, you don't talk to me anymore, or well, you know, we don't have sex anymore, or whatever. And so conflict tends to accompany those needs not being met. It's easier to have negative feelings toward each other when you do not meet each other's needs. We are just going to do an overview of the needs, and they all correspond. It's cool how men and women are made, right? We talked about this a while ago, that men and women are like complementary, and like, we tend to like, one part of us like fits into the other part, like it all works together very well. For women, like the number one, so the first 2 are the primary emotional needs. These are the intimate emotional needs, right? Like, these are things that only your spouse should meet. Everybody got it? As far as members of the opposite sex go. Affection. Women need affection. They need to be held and they need to be hugged. You have to walk up and like hold them sometimes, right? Women, am I wrong? Like, sometimes you just need somebody to come up and hold you. Like, that's it. Good job, John. You need to hold hands. You need to like give kisses that aren't like aimed at, you know, more. But it goes beyond just physical affection. Like it's writing love notes. It's bringing flowers. It's doing little things for each other. It's these sorts of things. Women love that. Women enjoy Sleepless in Seattle, I guess. I haven't seen it. But it is like this sort of, hey, we fall in love because we do romantic like junk together, right? You've seen it, haven't you? You own it, don't you? You made Adam watch it, didn't you?
You've seen it.
Have I?
Yes.
All right.
You blocked that.
Are there explosions? I forget when was the last time I watched a chick flick.
Long time.
For men, the alternate to that for women is like affection is important to women. Sex is important to men. Woo! Your wife's gonna murder you. You know that. Stinking newlyweds. For women, the primary means of expressing love is affection. Like
I just
that's
wanted to, this like whole side is still considered to be newlyweds over there.
yeah. For women, their primary way of expressing affection, their primary way of expressing love is like through this affection. Like they want to be held, they want to like all of this stuff. A huge chunk of women's like books and movies, like the stuff that is aimed at women, that tends to be more like where men pornography is all about sex. For women, pornography is all about emotions, right? Like it's all about like, oh, you know, you read Twilight and it's all about like the feelings they have, and it's, you know, I haven't read it, I'm guessing, but it's basically 3 volumes of like, let's talk about our feelings, right?
I was gonna say if you did, 10 points off your man card.
It'd be more than that. But women tend to be about emotion or affection, and men tend to be about sex, and like it's their primary ways of expressing like affection. They complement each other, but the taker like tends to like want one and not the other, and they tend to not like. It's easy to fall out of the pattern of meeting each other's needs in this area. Of that 14 hours, affection and sex, like that's on the list. Conversation and recreational companionship. Women like to talk. Has everybody understood that so far? They want to hear you talk if they're not talking. They really want to hear you talk, right? They want to know what you think. They want to know what you feel. They want you to talk to them about like what they have planned for the week, or what they want to do next week, or that movie we saw, how did that make you feel? Or what do you, it's, ladies, am I wrong?
Yes.
Like women connect through talking. Quiet, woman.
Make me a sandwich.
Mark, you're going to die.
He is not saying anything that has not come out of his mouth.
I do not demand.
So I would love that. I like it when you assert your authority.
Hey.
Most women don't.
Moving right along. Women enjoy talking, they enjoy conversation, right? When women get together, they talk to each other, right? When men get together, we shoot guns and blow up vegetables, right? Men tend to be much more oriented toward recreational companionship.
Or shoot vegetables, like at her. Yeah.
I haven't shot any of your family members.
Potato guns!
We did shoot potato guns at my So men are all about recreational companionship. We want to do stuff together. We want to, like, we're object oriented, we're action oriented, we want to do stuff. These are the four big ones, right? And so your 14 hours a week should comprise of these things if you're going to follow the policies. 14 hours a week of recreational companionship, conversation, sex, or affection. Recreational companionship doesn't even need to be games. It can be working together, believe it or not. It can be you watching him work, which is weird. Like, but guys like it when women watch them work. Am I wrong?
That depends if it's active watching or passive watching.
Yeah. Watching versus directing.
One of my girlfriends said that her husband said, come outside and gonna give you a Christmas gift, and it was him chopping wood without a shirt on.
Funny, I got that for my wife this year too. Which ruined the surprise.
You're on video too! Are you okay?
Yeah.
Like some
It'd be
TV
appropriate.
Honesty and openness.
You should not try to drink when you're speaking, you know?
No.
It has bad consequences.
It reminds me of Airplane where he has the drinking problem. Splashes water, I can't. Anyway, honesty and openness. Women like honesty and openness. They want it. They want you to talk to them. They don't want you to shut down. They don't want you to bottle up. They want you to tell them the truth, and they want you to have conversations that are open. Men want an attractive spouse.
Which those two are nothing.
Women that you wouldn't think so, but what women are attracted to in men, right? Very often has to do with their honesty, has to do with their openness, has to do with their like inner self. Ladies, am I wrong? Whereas men tend to be very visual. Like, it just is the truth. Does that mean you have to look like a supermodel? No. Right? It means men like it when their wives wear lingerie. Mark, I'm gonna murder you. Actually, no, she's gonna murder you. She's probably armed.
You know, he's only like this when you're around.
Is it really? I'm that guy?
Oh no. Believe it or not, he's got one of those people too.
Or, you know, how you, all right, so ladies, the first time you went on a date with your husband, did you wear sweatpants and a t-shirt?
No, but I went fishing, so it was about the
Oh.
equivalent.
When women go out on dates early on, they tend to wear nice clothes, they tend to do their hair, they tend to make sure that they are relatively bathed, they tend to...
Relatively big.
they tend to like...
That's man speak, right?
That's man speak right there. They tend to check those boxes, right, to make sure those things are taken care of. Like, because men are visual, isn't it? It's true, right? They do their hair, they wear nicer clothes. Men, like, it's very easy to stop doing that after you get married, right? It's very easy to, like, never wear, like, nice nightgowns to bed. It's very easy to never dress up for dates. It's very easy to never wear anything that he finds attractive. Some women do that actively to get him to not touch them. Like, stay away from me. Right? I'm wearing my sweatshirt and my painter's pants. Don't touch me. But like the attractive spouse thing isn't just about being thin or whatever. It's very much about like preparing yourself, like, or trying to be attractive, like, or trying to present yourself in a way that is attractive. Financial support. For wives, financial support is a big deal, right? Very few women are cool with marrying a husband who will not work or take care of their family, right? I knew a guy who, he was in college, I think, forever and ever, and he was dating a girl who was out of college, and she was making a living, and he sort of planned on going to college for a really long time. And she broke up with him because he didn't have a job. And she told him outright, look, I really like you, but like, you're not working, and you're not gonna work anytime soon. And you're getting a degree in English, so you probably aren't going to like ever have a real job. Like, she was very open with him, like, you're not gonna provide for me, so I'm not going to date you anymore. And like, he came back and he was wholly offended by the idea. Like, shouldn't love conquer all? But at the end of the day, well, love doesn't pay the rent, right? Again, it's very important to women, like, that their husbands, like, financially support them.
It's a question.
Yes.
So why do so many couples want to live together?
Oh, without getting married? It's because they do not want to commit, I think. I don't know. I didn't live with my wife before we got married.
I didn't either.
I think it has a lot to do with not
It kind
committing.
of breaks every rule here.
I think,
Maybe not the top one.
I think we have to think about that before I answer it, and I think most of the answers I give you are going to be really politically incorrect. How's that?
That's okay with me.
Yeah, but just videotape.
I'm videotaping. Ask me when we're done. Men want domestic support, right? We want like the house clean. You know, we don't want to do laundry. We don't want to do like cooking. We want domestic support. Like that tends to be very high on the list of needs for men. And it's sort of the counteracting need there. Women want family commitment. If I'm going to have children with you, you darn well better hang out and help me raise them, right? That is family support. You better come home and help me take care of the kids. You better be a part of the family, right? And it is very easy because men, like for men to fall out of that, because men, there are days I get home from work or days that I get done with work and all I want to do is sit in my office and shut the door, right? And maybe watch TV or maybe read or whatever, but I sure as heck do not want to crawl around on the floor with Titus, right? Or have a tea party with Abby. Some days that's just how I am. I want to be alone. But that's not family commitment, right? Like family commitment is involvement. And it's very important to wives. Like it's very often, I don't know that it's universal, but I hear a lot of women say that is a very attractive thing when a man like takes care or plays with his kids, right? Which seems crazy to me because anyway, men want to be admired, right? This falls into the respect thing, but it's kind of the counteract to this. Men want to be admired. They want their wives to look up to them. They want their wives to look at them like with a degree of respect and like awe. Like it's something men want. They want to be looked at in a good way. And they want to be talked up about. One of the best things you can see, like if you watch, there are a handful of folks I know that go to this church where the wives will talk about their husbands like they are Greek gods in front of them. And you watch those guys, they are like, you know, on cloud 9 when that happens. It's the truth. Like it's one of the best things you can do is talk to talk about your husband with admiration in front of him or to him, or you know, look at him with admiration. Like we know when that's happening. We're aware of that. We may not know when you're mad, but we know when, you know. And so these are the basic needs. We're going to go through them in more depth, and we're going to talk about like sort of the ins and outs of them in the future. But that is our last slide. And I am long this week. I did less material. We still went long because